Today we have Truth Talk, a conversation, and we have one of the most favorited people, that is Bill Coffman. I almost said Cosby.
Not the most favorite person anymore.
Is here with us today, and I'm so excited.
Top of the heap of favorite people, the other fella.
You are one of my favorite people, Bill. And so I wanted to it's so exciting to have you all to myself, to ask whatever questions that might come up, to chat, to pick your brain. And if it comes up, I have something exciting. Well, not exciting, but something to show you that you'll be surprised about. However, I want to first tell everybody watching today that feel free to comment or chat. At this time, we are pre-recording. So when it airs at 2 p.m., I will not be available for the chats. But as right now, if you are seeing this on a limited source of output, feel free to chat with us and help gear our conversation. But anyway, Bill, so how are you today? It's been a long time since yesterday.
I know. It's been a whole day since we were doing this. Yesterday we had the beautiful Brandy with us. And I was like, I like her so much. I'm glad that you introduced us, because that's a really great person to know.
Yeah, she's amazing. She's an amazing person. I'm going to change the scene. Hold on. I would like us to be bigger. There. I like that better. I just, I'm like, wait a minute. You seem so far away. So I like this. So far. So Bill, what's on your mind? What's the first thing that comes to your mind to talk about today? Anything?
Well, I'm just going to be, I think the thing I've talked to a lot of people about is, and I think it's just a mental thing. It's not anything spiritual or real or set in stone, but I'm glad 2020 is over. It's not quite there yet, but I just don't want to think about it anymore. I want it to be in the rearview mirror, man. I just do. Worst year of my existence. Not just for me, to be honest with you, it hasn't been all that bad for me personally, but it's been bad, and it's been bad for a whole lot of people, and people I know and people I don't know. And it's just, I don't know what it was in the history of mankind. There's been a few years that have been pretty terrible. As you know, I like history, and there's been some pretty rough years in human existence. This isn't the worst, but it's the worst one in people our age, and you're much younger than me, Melanie, but people born in the 20th century or the 21st century, by our age, I'm putting it in a very large group of people. If you're alive and you were born before or after World War II, and I was born during the Vietnam era, if you're during anywhere in those things, then guess what? I'm talking about you. This is the worst year of our lives collectively.
I was going to ask you.
21. Just that's it.
When you said that, I was actually, and I'm glad you went there, I was going to ask you, how old do you have to be now to have experienced something like this as a whole society that devastated everybody? How old are you going to be, 80 or 90 years old today to have experienced something like this?
Well, I don't think you've experienced anything like this, possibly with the exception of World War II. Because when we entered World War II in 1941, there was no guarantee you're going to win that thing. The Axis powers were very powerful, and when we entered, the Japanese hadn't suffered a defeat ever. They just hadn't done it. They started expanding in like the mid to late 30s. I mean, exceptionally so. And they did not experience a defeat anywhere they went. And we even had some people, the Fighting Tigers, you might have heard of them. They make movies about them and stuff. Those were actually pre-World War II fighter pilots and P-40s, American fighter pilots, fighting the Japanese in China. And we were losing. And that's just reality. And then, of course, in Germany, they didn't have any difficulty anywhere. Their Blitzkrieg, it's destroyed everything in their path. That's why it's called the Blitzkrieg. And so when we entered that thing, I'm sure there was some rah-rah, we're going to win, yay. First quarter of the game, But then reality struck, and we didn't win a battle for quite a while. We kept losing. And I think that's the last time that people probably felt like, uh-oh, we got a big problem. I don't think anybody's alive for the one before that, which was the Spanish flu.
Mm-hmm.
And that was big. And that killed 60 million people, a lot more than COVID. I don't think they thought of it the same as we do now. We're so sheltered, and we have such a good life, and they had a lot harder life when the Spanish flu came around. 1919, 1920, 1918, 1920. I don't remember the exact months, but it was in that time frame, a little over 100. It was 100 years ago, a little over.
Right.
And it was a rougher existence. Half the people, you know, a lot of the children, I don't know the number, but a lot of people, you'd have 5 kids because 3 or 4 of them weren't going to survive into adulthood. That was reality. Maybe that's a little high, but it's not too high. I mean, a lot of families were like, wow, we got to have a lot of kids because we want some adults here to take care of us in our old age. And so that's a little rougher time, but that was the last 2 times I can think of that was anything like what we've had in 2020.
You know, back in, I guess, March, April, probably April, I was talking to someone. She is in her late 70s, but her mom is still alive, and she's like 102 or something like that. And she was telling me that her mom going through, because, you know, we had the racial riots at that point, we had the COVID closures, we had the political unrest. And she was telling me that to her mom, who's not clear-minded, like her mind goes back and forth in present and past, her mom was hearing the things on the news and thinking it was from her time, you know, that her childhood when she was experiencing these things growing up. And it was like we're reliving history in the past year. In 2020, I think we have relived certain parts of history that we thought would stay in the history books.
That's pretty profound. I think that's right.
Yeah, and it's you know, one of my daughters, she said to me the other day, she said, you know, I knew things would come, you know, biblically talking, things would come, and we read about the revelations and the stress on the society that will happen and the uncertainty, but we didn't expect to live it. Like the generation of the 20s, 20 to 30-year-olds, they didn't expect to live out any of what is proposed to happen or what has already happened. And so it's kind of like an earthquake in that generation that, you know what, everything can change. You know, the older generation is kind of okay with it. As far as we've been here before, it's more familiar, the heartache and the hardship. But the younger generation living through this is kind of saying, what is this about? Did I lose you, Bill?
In an instant. In fact, I think that's the thing that surprises me the most, and I've been teaching that in my Bible studies, is I'd always taught that the things for the second coming, I mean, Jesus can come back anytime he wants. I'm not telling him when to come back, but the things that I read in the scriptures that have to come to pass is that, one, you have to have Israel. We didn't have them until 1948. Right. But number 2, you have to have a temple. We don't have one in Israel. They just moved the capital to Jerusalem this year, or 2 years ago. This is the first time that's happened. So we need to have those things happen. We still need a temple, but we also have this Antichrist guy, the man of perdition, the beast. We've got these things that are going to happen. Well, in order for that to happen, people aren't going to be very free. The liberties that we possess now aren't going to be there. That's clear. And I thought, well, that's interesting. So we have to have a transition from liberty that we now enjoy to something that's going to be more akin to what it used to be, maybe in the feudal system, where you had a lord and a king and a baron, and then the average person down here, and then even the serf, which we would call a slave, but they called serfs. I think you're going to need to have something like that system, at least to some degree. And how can we go from what we have to that? Because nobody's going to go for that. And I've taught that for years. I said, this has to be a slow process. This isn't going to happen overnight.
Right.
I was wrong. It can happen like that. I am shocked at how fast people have said, I don't want rights. I don't want freedom. I don't want liberty. I want safety. And
I've heard you say that a lot.
Yeah.
Your picture's getting fuzzy. I'm going to try to change the picture again.
Okay.
And just see if it makes it where you're clear again. Yeah, you're much clearer this way. So we're going to keep it this way. Okay. But I've heard you say that a lot. And do you really think that people just want safety, or do the majority just feel like, what's the use? We're not gonna achieve anything, even if we speak up, even if we revolt, even if we protest, nothing's going to change. So they're just resilient in saying, I'm just going to take what the government gives.
Well, I think you're on to something as far as some people. There's no doubt that I might even be in that category. But I don't think anybody in the World War II generation that was raised during the Depression, I probably should have mentioned the Depression as a rough time, but I don't think they thought they were in that rough a time, because my parents were in the Depression and they just said, look, everybody had it bad, so we didn't even notice. But anybody raised in that time and fought in World War II, they wouldn't have given up their liberties for anything, including life. And we have had it really soft for a long time. Me too. I'm 58 years old and I had it soft. My whole existence has not been all that hard. I mean, individually you might have it hard in your life. I'm talking a culture. We didn't have our freedoms really threatened in the Korean or the Vietnam War. We fought for freedom of other people in those wars, but we didn't have our freedoms, like now I actually see as more of a cultural shift, a zeitgeist, if you will, a spirit of the time, that there's more people right now, I think, willing to take safety over liberty. But they don't say it like that. Nobody says, oh, I'll give it up. But what they are saying is, they're not saying it, but they're doing it. From when they're crying in the street, whatever, we have to do it this way, and go give the government all the rights to tell you what to do, where to stand, how to do it. Because if we don't, we're all going to die. Well, that's possible. But I still say that I would rather have liberty than anything else on this planet myself.
Okay, so that brings me to this question. We're being told, even now, I think if I look at the last 4 months, we were getting very, very, very tired of all the restrictions, right? And so then they gave us a stimulus bill, and that quieted the agitated. It quieted the voices down. But then it got where, okay, we're rising up again. Where's more money? How are people going to do this? We can't do this for very long. And then they said, okay, vaccines are coming. So to me, it's like we get a little bit complacent because they feed us a little carrot. And we're like, okay, we're still on their radar. They're going to give us a vaccine. And when the vaccine comes, everything will be over. And then the vaccine came. Well, the lockdown came and everybody's like, forget the lockdown, it's holidays. And everybody's upset about that, but we still do what we can. But then the vaccine came and everybody's like, yay, vaccine, it's going to be over. But now the vaccine is here and they're saying it's not over. You still have to wear your mask. You still have closures. Right. You still have everything going on. So to me, it's not so much that we're all complacent. It's like by the time we get fed up again, they give us a bone. And then we get fed up again, they give us another bone. And I think what people think is that it's going to end, that we're just going to one day, they're going to say, hey, guess what? Numbers are down. Go back to living life the way you were. I don't see that happening. And I think if people didn't see that happening, we would have more of a
Maybe
problem.
so. I can see what you're saying, because like I said, I don't think people are saying this like, oh, I hope they take away my freedom. I don't believe that. But
Right.
what I'm saying is that their actions are doing it. And in the history of mankind, when you hand a centralized governmental authority some power, it takes a war to get it away from them.
Mm-hmm.
You don't, and I don't mean that completely like you have to get up in arms. Please don't misunderstand what I'm saying. But I'm just saying in history, you don't get it back too easy. You know, when you're the underling of somebody, they don't hand you things. You have to take them. And we in America, we do that usually through voting and all that kind of stuff. But my point is it takes effort. They're not going to do one day say, oh, by the way, all the rights I took from you, well, I think you need those rights back. I'm just going to give them to you. And the reason I say that is because there'll come another crisis. Mm-hmm. They come up with something else. And by they, I mean, honestly, reasonable people. I am not a conspiratorialist, so I don't sit around and think people are doing this in some back alley somewhere, or, back smoke-filled room going, we can take all the rights away. Yeah, if we just trick them. No, I don't believe that for a second, but it doesn't, but the end is the same. When the communists took over for the first time in Russia in the Bolshevik Revolution, the average Russian was like, good, got rid of the Tsar, life is good, we're going to have a good time. Look, we're all going to be equal. They really believed it. I can guarantee you the average Russian thought, my life has just improved. It did not. It got much worse under the communists than it ever was under the czarists. But that's just the way it was. I mean, but they didn't walk into that saying, I'd like to have it worse. Right. They walked in saying, I'd like to have it better. They didn't have it better afterwards. And but it took a lot of years to get rid of that. China, it started in a few years later, 1947, 48. That's whenever Mao Zedong took over. The Communist Party is still in charge in China. It's different than the Russian communists. It's different than the Mao's communists completely. It is different, but nonetheless, you're not free. You don't get to choose. You can't leave because you want to. You can't do all kinds of things. I'm a cop, as you know, and years ago, I remember we were breaking up a party in Isla Vista. This is one of the jobs cops got to do, and especially Halloween in Isla Vista. And I never really cared about breaking them up. I'm like, well, I don't care. And, they're young and they have to go to class tomorrow, but oh well. And that was kind of always my attitude about it. Just don't jump off of a balcony. Don't get run over by a car. All right. But you still got to do it. And there's rules and ordinances and everything else. So about 2 a.m, I'm breaking up a party, me and about, I don't know, a dozen other cops. It's a really big party. And people are walking out. We're just, okay. And most people are really nice. Honestly, they're like, hey, how you doing? Thanks. Because we aren't even arresting anybody. We just go home, go away. This one girl, she looks at me and she said, right at me too. And I thought it was funny. She goes, I wish I lived in a free country like China. I started laughing. I said, go home and YouTube some Tiananmen Square stuff, protests there, and just see if you still agree. But she didn't even have a clue, what she was talking about. So I just thought it was funny. But I keep harping back on that, Melanie, because I really do think it is the paramount thing that the modern, nobody had until America. Nobody. It's not like this was a wonderful, pristine place and then America showed up. No, this was a place where half of the world was enslaved by the other half of the world. This was a place where the average person had no say on anything, including what job they did. You were born the son or daughter of a shoemaker, you became a shoemaker. You were born in this town, you stayed in that town. You married inside your class, and don't dare to come out of your class. And that wasn't Europe, that was in Africa, that was in Asia, that was in the Americas. Because by the way, the American, Native Americans, depending on if you were North or South, the Northern Americans, Native Americans, they moved all over the place, but they were tribal and they fought each other tooth and nail. in the South, they actually had more cities and stuff where they stayed in one spot, but they conquered people and they had human sacrifice and all kinds of things. We found so much of that. And so this wasn't a pretty, beautiful, pristine world. And then all of a sudden America showed up. No, it was pretty rough. We got freedom first here, then it started expanding around the world. But now I think it's collapsing a little bit. First here, maybe around the world. And I don't know any of that. I'm just telling you what I think.
There's so much you just said, and I'm not the history buff, but I follow what you say, and I love how you bring history into everything in a way that we can relate to it, and that it makes sense to someone like me who doesn't follow history that well. I care about it. When it's brought to my attention, or something reflects it, I'll research it, but I don't have it locked up in my brain like you.
Nobody else cares. I'm a history nerd, is what I am. I love it. Nobody else does that.
So let me ask you this. You seem, Bill, to be highly sought after. I'm going to say that in the world of doing videos now that everything is on video, right? And you mentioned the Bible study earlier, and I want you as often as I can get you for anything I do. And I think there's other people that I don't even know about coming after you to speak about biblical things and history and the days that we're living in. Do you think that with all of the transition from in-person meetings to doing everything online, that the one positive in this is that we're reaching more people with truth, with honest conversation, with the Bible, than we've ever done before?
Yes, I think so. I think this is a really good platform that I wasn't utilizing until about a year and a half ago in any way. I just spoke to people and spoke to groups and churches and Bible studies or anyone that would listen, but not to reach out like now we're doing and trying to expand and all the things. I think the future is going to be this. And I hope that God uses me personally. I know he's using you this way. And I hope that God uses me, especially in the next few years, because I'm retiring eventually here from law enforcement completely. I'm going to transition my life. I'm just over a year away from 60. And that's fine. I feel good about that. I'm looking forward to those years of moving forward in that thing. And I want my podcast and my YouTube channel. And, I'm kind of a silly guy. So I did that little cranberry challenge with my daughter the other day while I was skateboarding, because I still skateboard. And I was going 25 miles an hour down a hill.
Oh my goodness.
Cranberry, making a cranberry challenge. And I'm having fun with it, But on a serious note, I want to do the podcast stuff and move forward with these social media platforms so that I can actually hopefully share what I understand of the scriptures, which isn't all that much, because I don't think I have a keen grasp or anything. I'm not the guy to come to and listen to, but maybe a little bit, and maybe from a different perspective, because I don't teach it exactly the same as I hear everybody else. I try not to, because most people just teach, this is the verse and this is what it teaches. I'm really trying to get a bigger picture of everything and say, look, this is the big picture here. And kind of the God's eye view. I keep using that term, but I came up with it about 2 years ago. It's a God's eye view. He sees all time and eternity from up above. We can only see a small part of it with our myopic eye, but I'm trying to expand that in my own life so that I can say, okay, well, I see what happened in the past. I see how it got dealt with. I see what, how he told us in the Bible things are. I see how human history is, and I'm trying to put that in our own lives.
I love that, because, when I teach, one thing I don't do is I don't watch other people teach, because I don't want to be so influenced by what someone has said. Then it becomes what I teach, and all I'm doing is is regurgitating what everybody says. So I typically don't watch a lot of people. Of course, I have my pastors that I listen to, but
Sure.
I love the fact that what I believe you're going to give is the history, because when you read scriptures, I think you would agree, is that it's neglectful to just read a verse and then say, okay, this is what it's saying. I think we need to find out who wrote it, what the time frame was,
Right.
what was going on in that part of society, that part of the world, that part of the walk with Christ, and see how it all really relates. Because the people say, oh, it doesn't apply to us anymore.
Hmm.
It will, if you understand how it applied in their time, then you can know how to apply it in our society. Do you agree with that?
I completely agree with that. In fact, I think it's funny when I hear people say, well, because I've had this conversation with many people, and so they're like, well, I don't know if that's an old book. Does it apply to us today? I don't know, and I've heard that over and over again. And I always say, well, yeah, a lot different back then. People back then, they did wrong things to each other. Just look at them. Well, yeah, but we do that too. Yeah, and this, and and people don't really back then. They wanted to know why we were on the earth. Like, was there a purpose? That's totally different than today, huh?
Oh,
No.
so different.
And,
Oh,
if people would, they didn't really know what they were doing when they were young, and they kind of got a little bit of handle on it as they got a little bit older. But then they got really old, and they needed to be taken care of. They had a lot of things in the scripture about taking care of the elderly and to take care of the orphan. I said, so that's like nothing today. We don't take care of any of those people today, right? Everything in that scripture applies to us today.
it really does. It really does. And I think it's going to be important to have someone like you transition from, in your lifetime being, a single young guy figuring out what life is all about, to a married guy, to a father raising kids, then to, being a cop, and then being a teacher slash cop, to being a part-time cop, part-time teacher, to then being a full-time teacher. I think the transition of your life is so rich, and I think it will offer a lot to everybody to see how you mentioned once a while back, you and I were talking, how seasons of life and how a healthy season of life and the changes in those seasons will lead you to the next season. And, I would love for you to talk about that, because it really allows you to be content with where you are. I talk to moms a lot, and they're like, oh my gosh, my life is nothing what I want. It's just chaotic. I don't look right. I'm gaining weight. But they have 5 little kids at home, or 3 kids in school, and they're going everywhere. They can't take care of them. They can't, it's not about them. But if they wait until their kids get a little more individualized, a little more self-sufficient, then they can start taking care of themselves and doing what's in them. Because there's a season to be a mom, and then there's a season that you can say, hey, I'm all about myself, which I'm in that season now, and I'm kind of loving it. I'm really loving it.
Awfully quick, Melanie. I remember when your big kids were little kids, and you remember when mine were. I mean, my youngest is 15 because we kept having kids. My oldest is 31 though, so we had 2 kids when we were in our 20s. 2 kids in our 30s and 1 kid in our 40s. So, I mean, that's what my wife and I did. And we've been married over 30 years. But yeah, you say that like, you remember being a young man, and I've never been shy. So I did date a lot, because if I met somebody, I was like, well, let's give it a go and see if she'll go out with me. I mean, that was me. I did that. And I got married when I was 26 years old. And so between about 14, when I noticed girls, until 26, I just had a whirlwind of a time in life. I was in the military. I was an athlete. I played sports. I went to college. I did all these things in that period of time. A lot of people do. There's a ton of people with that same story. But the biggest thing is, it was yesterday. Mm-hmm. I'm not a young man. I don't pretend to be young, but I was young yesterday, literally in my mind, and almost everybody my age, I'm sure, it was like, holy cow, was that fast. There's country song that said, you talk about a mom, and it talks about seeing a mom with a crying baby, and she's really frustrated. And the song tells her, I can't remember exactly how it goes because I don't remember, but it was so profound. It said, "You're gonna miss this. You're gonna want this back." That's the only part I remember, to be honest with you. But that is.
I know that song. It talked about having pictures on the refrigerator, and you want your refrigerator back, but it's crowded with all the pictures, and you're gonna miss that. One day you're gonna want to see the crayons on the roof. I remember that song.
Yeah, it really touched me when I heard it. Now, granted, I don't know the lyrics too well, but the principle is true. Right now, I remember when my kids were little. I don't have any little kids anymore. Youngest is 15, and the next one's 20, and the next one's late 20s, and the next one's in the 30s. I mean, I don't have any little kids running around. I loved it when there was little kids at Christmas. Yeah. I did, and I'm gonna miss that. I don't get it back. I don't. So now it's time to move on to the next season. And what you are talking about, I believe, what came to my mind, and it was just recently. It's very recent that I came to this thought. But I said, wow, if I divide my life into quarters, into fours, then and do them and figure I live to be 80 years old, because I think I don't smoke, don't drink, don't chew, and don't date girls who do. So there's a really good possibility. I jump out of planes and scuba dive, so there's a possibility I don't make it to 80. But there is a possibility that I do. Okay, so let's just put that in there, and I make it to 80 years old. And I divided that into sections of 20. And I said, wow, the first 20 years, you're just a kid. You're having a blast. Well, I was. And you just are, motoring through. There's no responsibility. You don't really care. Your parents try and tell you what's important, but you're not listening. Your teachers tell you things. You don't remember any of it. You just are motoring through. You don't give a hoot, except for you and your friends and having fun. And I was just talking last night to a friend of mine I grew up with. We were on the same T-ball team. We were also on the same high school football team. And he's a year ahead of me in school. His older brother made the NFL. That's how good of athletes our whole family was. He was really good too. And remember in Little League, you couldn't hit him. He could pitch so good, he was just better than most of us. But he was my friend, and we were talking about our childhood, and that was a great time of what I'm talking about, having fun, not caring too much about anything, not worrying about the future. Then you hit about 20, and you look at yourself and you say, holy cow, I'm pretty grown up now. What's going on? And it surprises yourself. You even look at you and say, I was in my early 20s, and I was driving a go-kart that was looked like a NASCAR with a bunch of teenagers. It was one of the teenagers' Christmas gift. And I was out there in the school grounds that they took it to, in the parking lot, and I was driving it too. And one of the kids flipped it over. And the mother, when we brought it back, said, and I'm like early 20s, and the mother said, how did this happen? You had adult supervision. And she pointed to me. I had never considered myself to be adult supervision at that point. I was just there to drive the go-kart, man. I had no idea I was supposed to be paying attention. But that happened. So then in your 20s and then 30s, I think you kind of grow up into adulthood. Most of us start families. We start the businesses that we're going to continue, because by late 20s, usually your education's done. You've got a family started. You're working in a business that you're going to try and conquer and become the greatest that there ever was at that position. That's normal and good. And then over those next few years, you start your family, you take them, raise them in church, or you do whatever, take them to Little League practice or whatever. And that consumes your entire 40s and 50s. And they're growing up, and they don't really want you never wanted away from you. All of a sudden, teenager, and they're like, hey, give me the keys to the car, and please don't talk to me in public, but can I have some money? And that's everybody's experience. This isn't mine only or yours only. This is everybody's experience. And that's normal human behavior. But that's where you start transitioning to, I have now kind of done all this stuff in my life, and now I'm putting my life into getting my kids onto that next level of being a child to being a young adult. And you put a lot of effort into it, because let me tell you, just because somebody turns 18 under normal house circumstances, that doesn't mean a thing as far as like they're out of your life.
Can we talk about that? Because that hits a button for me. I have a 22,
That's where
23,
you're at right now.
24. Yeah, 22, 23, 24-year-old. And, you know, I'm not the person that, okay, my kids turned 18 or even 21, and I said, hey, you're completely on your own.
Right.
But I know that there's so many in society that, you know, has that understanding. Oh, they're 20, they're 18. They go to college or don't go to college, but they're on their own. They're 21. They're definitely an adult. So, but there's no magic thing that happens at 21 that makes you equipped all of your finances, all of the things that you got to, I mean, even dealing with your car and like, okay, I'm 21 now, I can deal with all the mechanics of my car, especially, and this is sexist, but I'm that way, especially to the females. Handling all the stresses that come with life, handling everything that happens with the management where they work or the school and the professors or even peer pressure. Like they still need a mom and a dad. You know, they still need that adult, grandparents, aunts, uncles, somebody to say, hey, I'm still in the game with you.
Right. You're not driving them to soccer practice. You're not going to drive them to soccer practice and stand on the sidelines anymore. But you are still in their life and you're helping them. And by the way, they're going to keep coming back and asking for help without even meaning to. They just all of a sudden get overwhelmed. I don't know when you moved out, Melanie, but I moved out right after high school. I was 18 years old. Me and my buddy, another guy that, not the guy I was talking to last night, but another guy, we moved out, got our apartment, and we thought we were the kings of the world. We really did. 18 years old. I didn't even shave yet. I was so young. But I thought I was a man. You know, I had a car. I had my own house. And, you know, about 3 months into this experiment of living on my own, the clothes were piled up really high and the refrigerator was not stocked very, very much. But that's okay because I lost all the electricity because nobody paid the bills.
That's what we're talking about.
How come we don't have electricity to watch football on TV? Well, because you didn't pay the bill, moron. And neither of us did. And we're like, well, I don't know. I thought you did it. No, I thought you did it. I mean, it was kind of, it's humorous now, but at the time we're like, hey, the 3 eggs we got, they're going to spoil. But that's normal for kids to, you know, you're an adult, but you're really not
Right.
really. So, but my point is now in that 40s and 50s where you're at, and I'm finishing.
I'm in the 50s, 60s. I'm right there with you.
I got you by 10 years, I'm pretty sure.
No, you do not.
What I'm saying is in that 40s, 50s range, you're turning that back to the kids. Yes. And you're developing them. One of my main goals is that my children do well once I'm gone.
Right.
And now that I can't say that was my main goal when they were 7. I wasn't concerning myself with me being gone and them having to live. I didn't think about it. Mm-hmm. But now I do, and it's a normal thought process, and I have to make sure that they're established in their lives, and I'm putting my life into that. Now, so that's the third section, you know, the first 20 years, second 20 years. The third section, I'm sorry, that was the second section of 20s. This is the third section of 20s. I'm going to go, well, I'm getting that wrong. First is 1 through 20, then 20 through 40, then 40 through 50. So it is the third section.
40 through 60.
Yeah, 60. Then the last one, which I'm entering now, in just over a year, I'll be 60. And that last section, most people, their kids are completely grown up and out of the house and on their own and started their own families, started their own businesses. Most people are in that. Now, I'll still have one kid in high school when I hit 60, but that's because we had one in our 40s. But most people, they're done with all that stuff and they're moving on to the next thing, which now for me is going to be service to the Lord. That's my plan. Now, if God uses me, that's his plan. If he doesn't, that's up to him. But I put my effort into having fun for the first 20 years. I put my effort into starting a business and a family my next 20 years. I put my effort into establishing my family into adulthood the next 20 years. And the last 20 years on this earth, I want to help establish the church for what they have to encounter. Now, I'm not a pastor. I don't want to be a pastor or any of that stuff. That's not it. I think I like to teach, and that's what I want to do, is have that last 20 years be I've been teaching the whole time, but I want it to be a expanded ministry that I think the things that you know how to do is going to allow for that.
And yeah, and the reason why I wanted you to elaborate on that is because, you know, maybe someone listening is in their 20, 30 range, but they feel like they should be in their 40 range, you know? And it's so much stress. I hear from people, you know, how hard it is. You know, they feel like they should be more established. I hear from 20-year-olds how, well, 22, 26, that they should already have their house, their family, their career solid, that they should be able to do, you know, have a 800 credit score, that, you know, their whole life should be unfolded already at 26, 27 years old. And I'm like, you just getting where you know who you are and getting things going. We have to tell the younger generation, take the steps. If someone can hear this and feel like, wow, I'm actually where I'm supposed to be, I'm in a healthy state, it can lessen the stress that some parents have put on younger people. It lessens the stress of what society puts on us. I remember thinking when I was 30, all the moms, all these 50-year-olds on TV, and all the 50-year-olds in my kids, you know, play groups, the grandparents, you know, 50, 60, they were fit and trim. Bill, they were looking good. And there I was 30 with, you know, moo dresses and my hair not done, you know, because I had three kids, 30, 31, and 32. So my 30s were babies. And then we fostered children as well. So we had a house full of baby kids. And it wasn't up to getting makeup on, doing my hair, all of that wasn't happening. But I would look at those really nice, put together 50-year-olds and think, how do they do that? And I come to realize, and one day I was just praying. I was like, God, I'm so unsatisfied with myself. And the reality was, when I'm 55, 60, I will then have time for myself as well. But right now, my time is with these youngins, and it's not my focus. And sure enough, I'll tell you, I am 53, so I'm only 5 years younger than you. You know, sure enough, now that I'm 53, I'm starting to be able to do the exercising and the focusing on myself and all of the rest of that, because my kids are no longer 100%, you know, for mine to deal with every day. So it's helpful if someone would have just told me, hey, wait until your kids grow up, then you'll have time for yourself. If someone would have just
look, I just think with me, I think it comes from not looking forward, but looking backwards. Maybe that's why I like history so much. But if you cannot know what it's going to be like at 30 to be 50, you can't know that, but you can know what it's like to be 12. So, because you were. So look back to being 12, look at a 12-year-old and say, oh, that 12-year-old says, I want to be grown up. I want to wear makeup and I want to go on dates or something like that. I want to be in a car date. And you go, no, you're not old enough for that yet. You're 12. I'm not going to let you. I mean, that's just silly. Don't live there. Be a 12-year-old for a little while. Okay, that's easy for a 30-year-old to do. They can look back to being, because they can remember being 12 and say, well, just be where you're at in life. And that makes sense to you. What doesn't make sense to you at 30 sometimes is, how in the world did these 50-year-olds get their mortgage paid off by now? How in the world did they raise their kids and look at their kids are doctors and lawyers? Oh my gosh, I'm just such a loser. I'll never be able to do that stuff. That's normal for us to do too, because we're looking ahead to something we don't even know. We have no idea what it's like. I don't know what it's like to be 80. You know, I have no idea what it's like to be 80, but if I live long enough, I will. And in fact, I don't even really know what it's like to be in my 60s yet, because I got a whole year and a few months to go. But
and with society, what does it look like?
Well, what I just want to say that I'm going to let that next 20 years hopefully be something I don't understand completely because I haven't been there yet, but not dwelled around my career, not around my kids. Like it'll be around my kids, but I'm no longer trying to, make sure that they don't jump off of a tall bridge because they're smart enough not to do that anymore. And well, okay, I was never smart enough not to do that.
I was thinking they're your children, Bill. I don't know.
Yeah, I make some bad decisions, but my parents are gone now, so they can't correct me. But the thing is you still have something to do with your kids, but it's not so pressing every minute of the day. They're making their own decisions as they should. If you didn't raise your kids to make their own decisions, that wasn't a good thing for them.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you're never going to be completely out of your life. No way. Not. And I don't want them out of my life. And I wish my parents were still alive. Because if they were, I would go to them probably more now than I did when I was younger.
Well, Bill, I know that time is ending. We have to end this conversation. An hour sure does go by fast. And I really appreciate you sharing the philosophy of Bill Coffman, because I think it's a great mental status. I think it's a great time chart and way of living that you have. I think it's one of the healthiest ways that people think about life that I've ever heard. And so I'm glad that you shared that. You did mention, before we go, you did mention about the podcast you want to start. Do you want to talk about that for a minute, or is that something we're going to have to wait as a teaser?
No, it's okay. I mean, I've already got the name of it, and I've spoken on a lot of podcasts. So I've been to places that had podcasts. I've never done one remotely. I've gone to the place where they're doing the podcast and been invited and done that. But I want to do one. I want to call it Investigation Bible. And that's what I want to do. And I'm a retired cop, and I've investigated things for years. Used to be a soldier before that. Wasn't an investigator in the Army, but done all these things. And with these life experiences and my love for history and all that kind of stuff, I said, well, let's Investigation Bible and IB, and that's what I want to call it. And I want to have guests that are, professionals. Law enforcement, definitely, but maybe lawyers, educators, people that, scientists. I'm friends with a lot of people in these fields, and I want to have them be my guests and talk to them about that stuff. People who know the Bible, but also know other stuff surrounding it, and bring them on. And I think it would be a nice thing to do in the future. And I mean near future. Like, I think your plan is to have us start this next year.
Yes, January 2021. I want to do it, and I made this. Now this isn't legit, okay? But I got the name wrong, so but it's close. But just to whet the people's appetite, there it is. Investigation, not investigative. I got that wrong. But Investigation Bible with Bill Coffman, soon to be coming on a podcast near you. I want to make sure people get excited about that. I want to keep that on everybody's mind that it is coming, because I do believe that with your personality, your ability to speak well, not everybody can do that. Your ability to make complicated things seem simple, and bringing everything together. Like you said, bringing a police officer, how does the Bible have anything to do with a police officer's job, what he does every day? How do you do that? How does a doctor, take the Bible into his job? How, I would love to hear how you're going to do that. I look forward to it. So everybody just continue one more time. I'm going to show that Investigation Bible with Bill Coffman coming the first of the year to a podcast near you. Thank you, Bill, so much for today. I will see you next week. I was going to say Merry Christmas, but I think I'll see you one more time before Christmas. We'll see how that goes. Tell your lovely wife and family I said thank you for today, and have a good time. And for everybody else, this week on Truth to Hear for your daily dose, we still have tomorrow the Dive Deeper Bible study of the 5 points Jesus said to the churches in Revelation. And then Friday's message is, how do we live so that the Lord will defend you? Those are the 2 things coming up for this week. And thank you so much for joining us. Bye. Good night, Bill.
Okay, good night. Thanks for having me.